don't let anybody ever tell you can't do it, or at least try. But I don't know what tomorrow holds. I just care that what we're doing, I do my best with. I went to a school where the library used to be locked because people would steal the books. Rover BMW, Mattel, Coca Cola and L'Oreal. One of the things that stood me through in my career is I'm very good at observing, watching, learning without even realising. Don't check out before you've checked in. Put yourself forward.
Hello, I'm Heloise Finch. Welcome to TellBeyond, the podcast that asks extraordinary people to share their unfiltered, uplifting stories from life and business to lift you up and encourage you to think what's possible. In this edition of TellBeyond, I'm talking to someone who has had a career across multiple major blue chip brands, including BMW, Coca Cola, L'Oreal and the toy brands Mattel, Melissa & Doug and Galt, names that should bring us back to our own childhoods. There are many people who have stayed at one company for the whole of their careers, but that's not Jacqueline's journey. Jacqueline Taylor-Foo, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, you were born in London. Where were you in the family order?
I was second. I have one older sister.
And were your parents interested in business, careers, entrepreneurship when you were young?
My father was definitely an entrepreneur. Partly born out of the fact that he probably couldn't have worked for anybody else for very long once he hit true adulthood.
Tell me about that.
He came over from Singapore when he was 15, 16 years of age, hitchhiked with the Boy Scouts group, a well-documented book now with that scout group, which I should know more about, but I do have the book. And he met my mother. I think she'd come away from Nottingham to a party in London and the two of them met.
Wow.
And so he sort of found his way in his early years, worked for some grocery stores and a lovely flower shop in Queensway. And he started his journey of that industry there, and then latterly opened up and started selling flowers, and then did pre-packed vegetables.
So worked his way up from an adolescent and was his family entrepreneurial? Well, they must have been if he managed to do that.
Yeah, my grandfather was very entrepreneurial and had a good business, but because Dad had come away so young, he was a little bit of the black sheep. So, and then he married a woman of a different nationality as well, so that was quite tough for them, I think, growing up in that era.
You said to me previously that at home people had a hard time managing emotions.
Yeah, we had a very difficult childhood. I think there's no hiding from that. But I think, for anybody who's in that situation, it's normal. And we grew up in inner London, which at the time was very diverse. Mm-hmm. And people just got on with it. My school friends, some of which I'm still very much in touch with now, became like a family. And I think everybody was just trying to do the best they could.
What passions did you follow at school? Business, sport or something else?
Oh, I loved sport. I always enjoyed maths, English. I liked school. It was it gave a place of sort of security, boundaries. I was relatively okay at school, so that was easy, and I was quite clever at not getting into trouble, even if I was...
Oh, you're one of those ones.
Maybe the academics could have followed a bit more on the... On the other side, but and then the subjects I didn't like, I might climb out of a window and go off and play sport, and then be nice to the teacher and hope that might get me
getting people on side, learned from an early age.
I definitely did, yeah. That, and as we referred to with Dad, I think when he used to go to Covent Garden, I used to come in from clubbing at whatever hour in the morning, and I'd stop in the middle of the street, which was one of these inner London streets that cars parked on both sides, and we would have a little car standoff, and he was always really polite because it was the middle of the night. So until he realised it was me, because when the bright lights are on you can't see, and then he'd let me quickly get in, have a quick shower or a bath and change, and off we'd go to New Covent Garden Market.
Oh, wow.
To buy the fruit and vegetables for the day. So
that was
and I would have been 17, 18 years of age. So.
Possibly misty from the night before.
Well, I always had a little bit more energy than most, I think. And that, what amazed me was that the whole world had been up overnight. By 4 or 5 in the morning, they're finishing their day. The pub was open, which I thought was very strange. But again, what you pick up without realising it in negotiation and relationships as well, sort of that whole piece about if I'm nice to somebody and the way I talk to them and putting a deal together. I think you're absorbing it without realising it. At the time, I just wanted to spend time with my father because he didn't live with us, so that was a great opportunity.
It was a commercial apprenticeship as well in some ways.
Without realising it.
And what was the expectation for you in your family?
I didn't really have one. I mean, I left home very young because I knew whatever I was looking at wasn't quite what I wanted, and I knew I wanted different things for my family and children. There wasn't really a set rule book. I mean, there were, things that my father might say because of his background about what I should and shouldn't be doing, but because he wasn't present, and when you're a teenager, you think, you know everything, don't you? What you don't know is, and I'm going through that now with my own, so I can really empathise with that. But there wasn't really any expectation. And I kind of looked around and knew I wanted more. And I thought, I think like a lot of people, education would be the path out. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Having spent so much time now in business and mentoring younger people and colleagues, what advice would you give to your younger self back then?
Oh, that's a toughie. I would encourage self-esteem and believing in yourself. I think that's something that every human being probably questions themselves at different times, especially in our teenage and formative years. And I think enjoying the moment rather than worrying about what tomorrow might look like, or even what people might think, or how you're coming across, etc. I think you need a degree of that self-awareness. But I would have liked to have been more of a child as a child, although I am trying to compensate a bit in my adulthood.
You told me before that that you were terrified of embarrassing yourself.
Oh, I think that's very British, isn't it? Although actually, when I did my DNA check, I'm not actually very British at all. But I always thought I was British.
You grew up here, so
I did. So yeah. I think we're taught to not show off as a culture. We're taught to sort of sit quietly and have an element of, especially as a female, sort of being demure. And so yeah, I was mortified at things that, singing would have been awful, and I didn't know how to laugh at myself really. And if somebody was laughing at me, I think like a lot of people, I'd want to shrink like a snail that has had its little things touched. You just sort of go back into your shell. So yeah, I think that's my mum was very strict.
Wanted everything to be right.
Wanted everything to be right. That perfectionism. I think when you have a slightly dysfunctional background as well, you're trying to make sense and process the world. And kids often think when things are going wrong around them, it's because of them. And of course, it's nothing to do with you as a child. So I think, as a child, you should just be allowed to be a child. And maybe to a degree in today's world, a lot of people say the kids are very entitled and and I think it's because we want to give them everything that A, we didn't necessarily have, and B, we want it to be different. And there is a balance there on both. I think we all need boundaries. But yeah, I think believing in yourself and trusting that it's going to be okay, and being authentic. Doesn't matter if as long as you're authentic.
You wanted things to look right when you were young.
Had to be right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You've said to me previously, I didn't even know when to apply to university.
Yes. Well, I went to a school where the library used to be locked because people would steal the books.
How did you get in there?
I left home at 17. I decided that I wouldn't get my A-levels if I was staying where I was. So I moved from North London to South London. They tried to get me into a college in Putney where I rented my second room. But I had my heart set on going to Richmond upon Thames College because I knew the results were there. Somebody had told me they were a very good college to get into for A-levels. I researched which subjects and which teachers actually had got the best results and adjusted my course and my application to fit where I believed the best results were coming from.
And that was you applying, it wasn't someone applying on your behalf?
Me.
Yeah.
So that was at once I started at the college, within a year you have to apply, and we'd never even discussed things like that. So I didn't know that there was a process to all these things. So it was quite overwhelming at that age, because you're trying to worry about other things, paying rent, working 2 jobs, when your mates are, you know, especially in a nice area. I'd moved from a relatively normal sort of area to a slightly more affluent area where the parents would be there supporting their kids and family. And
they had their careers,
and my
they had
family
their
were all
lives
busy
mapped out.
surviving. So it wasn't that people were trying to neglect you, they're just busy trying to survive. So it was a very different world. But again, I think one of the things that stood me through in my career is I'm very good at observing, watching, learning without even realising you're taking it in and trying to assimilate the best. And that analytical side, I think, has helped me in later years.
So you quickly picked up at Richmond where the path you should be taking, what were the expectations of people going to university, and where did you go?
I went to Leeds. So I actually, because I'd always been told that they were the best, wanted to go to Cambridge, Oxford and Cambridge. Oxford never appealed for some reason, but Cambridge really did. And I was told I couldn't apply. And it's really funny, because normally people tell me I can't do something. I think that's a licence and a ticket to say, ooh, let's have a look. But for whatever reason, because again, I think it's a bit like doctors with teachers at that stage. If you respect them and you look up to them, you think they know everything. And they just said that I wouldn't get the grades I'd get because I was working, I'd left home. I didn't like rules. I never liked rules. They're for shaping. In the nicest way.
It's a theory.
A theory. But yeah, so I listened, and therefore that dictated the ones I applied to, and I never applied, which is always one of my sort of regrets. Even though the other thing they said is that at the time, if you went to Cambridge, you couldn't have a part-time job. So actually, because they want you wholly dedicated to studying.
So that might not have been a practical solution.
I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Was it a risk for you going up to Leeds, or was it?
Huge risk. I mean, I didn't really know the north. I wanted to go north because Mum was from Nottingham, and very quickly got corrected that Nottingham is not the north. That's the Midlands. But when you've come from London, I mean, I laugh because there was so much that I was sort of ignorant about. We grew up in a school with no grass, so we had to get on the coach to go to the playing fields for our 2 hours of PE a week. And they used to take us on geography expeditions to somewhere called the Welsh Harp, which I thought at the time was in Wales, and it actually is on the A40 in London. So again, and there's still gaps in my knowledge and education now. So I think that whole thing when you're growing up about worrying what other people think, nobody really cares as long as you're honest about it and can laugh about it. And now I really laugh about it. I genuinely thought when I was getting on that bus with the man that gave me the tickets, which I thought was very exciting with his machine, I was going to Wales, because it felt like an age. I mean, it was at least half an hour to get there. So, yeah.
So there were lots of gaps to fill in university. Did university fill in some of the gaps?
Yes. I think, mixing with different people, there's always something to learn. And it's great because, again, there are people from all sorts of backgrounds that have managed to get there, and everybody's got a story. And it just gives you that breadth and experience that I personally think is fantastic. I know it's expensive these days, but I still think that, if my children can and want to go, I'd definitely support them. I know there's a lot of focus on apprenticeships and what's right for one. It doesn't matter as long as they're happy, but I do think it's such a lovely experience.
You got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
And what did you study?
Psychology and sociology. So I went in to do English, and I realised that with 8 hours of lectures a week, I probably wouldn't be doing very much in the way of studying.
You were supposed to be reading Paradise Lost.
Yeah, exactly. And there wasn't Audible in those days, so I'd have had to have read it and paid attention. And I just thought, no, that wasn't going to be for me. So the psychology I loved, and I think when you've got a diverse background, that is, most of the people I met on those courses that had more interesting stories than a lot of the other people I've met. But it's they're both of them are sort of humanities and around people and society.
It's just about people watching, and psychology and sociology.
It's fantastic, and that again, in any job, in anywhere you go, you're always interacting with people, and I love that. I love learning about others.
Were you minded for business?
I think I probably was from a young age. I accidentally ended up becoming the vice president of the building because we'd gone along to a meeting and everybody had to give a whole £4 a term. But actually I did the maths really quickly and thought, hang on, there's like 400 people here. That's £1,600 a term, 3 terms a year. That's that's almost £5,000. And I'd seen two of these boys at the front who obviously had known each other from somewhere, kind of going, well, I'll be this person, you be that person, I'll sign the checks. So my friend had gone, we can't have this, we're not doing that. So she sort of said, when they said, anyone else want to put up, she put a hand up for me. So I ended up accidentally becoming this, and I ended up running and organising one of the university ball. We did pub crawls, so it already gave me that buying and selling, negotiated corkage. I think we put on a ball for £18 a head at the Hilton in Leeds for our
classy.
Fantastic. It was fantastic, but we managed to gather in sponsorship and collect up all the tickets, and we organised people to go and sell the tickets, and so it was there, I think, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's lovely. Tell us about the object that you brought in. Do you want to bring in the object and then you can tell us?
Yes, so this was a present given to me for my 19th birthday. So by somebody I was with at the time, because we both had a love for history and old shiny objects and music and dancing.
And what is it?
This is a gramophone. I think it's one of the later models. It's a HMV one. It is basically a record player.
So age 19, you're a gramophone.
I know, unusual child I was.
And did you dance?
I danced. I started around the same time doing something called Sarot, which is modern jive. And that's been something that I've also kept up over the years. I don't do it regularly anymore at all, but at one point I did very briefly teach. Which again I loved, and it's been a way of, when there's been ebbs and flows in my life or lonely times, I think exercise is amazing for the soul. But I also think that partner dancing, for a few minutes you've got touch but without being too close, you've got human contact, and when you share a song that's got passion and you dance well with somebody, it's just the most amazing connection that you can go, and that feeling inside is so contagious. And Sarok obviously comes from Le Roc, which was French, which is a partner thing. So it's really like, and when you can do that actually, it doesn't have to be to old music, often it's to modern music, but it's just things with a good beat, and it can be fast, it can be slow. It's such a good connection with people.
And have you danced to Jailhouse Rock yourself?
I have danced many times to Jailhouse Rock. I actually favour, at one point at this age, I would have had ponytail bobby socks and would have been one of those with a sash around my neck going in vintage shops looking for things. I have changed a little bit from that front. And I'm not, yeah.
Committing to the music.
I loved it. Flary dresses and it's all ages as well. It's so inclusive, tall, short, fat, thin, every colour. It doesn't matter. It's just dance is such a great expression, and you don't need a partner for it. You find one there, and you're changing all the time. So it really works with the way my brain works as well.
Wow.
So, but this has followed me around in every move. I've moved 21 times in 17 years until I settled with children. So every time I went anywhere, packing up, when I say move, taking every content I own, this
the gramophone came
with me, yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I only have a few records, but a lot of them mean something. So, and I was a big Elvis fan as I got older. I wasn't so much when I was younger, because I think when you're younger, they just look like old people.
And then
as you get
to
older,
the music.
you listen to the music, yeah. And you watch what it creates for people.
After university, you went into a corporate career.
I did.
You chose the safe option?
I'd started doing Boonak, so I'd gone to do Work Canada thinking I would travel, and I'd done the milk round as it used to be back in the day, and I'd landed the job with Rover BMW, and I ummed and ahed about what to do, whether I should not go travelling, because I had my heart set on going to Canada for some reason, just one of those things that you get fixated on. So in the end, I decided I'd go for the few months, come back and start on the corporate ladder. Plus, because I'd left home, I was, I didn't have a huge amount of debt because I'd worked, but I had debt, and I just thought, let's see what happens. So, yeah, I sort of fell into it in a way, but sort of partly meaningful way.
To apply for those jobs, you have to pass and jump through the hoops.
I really did, yeah, I really did.
And in your early career, who was your spirit guide? Was there a mentor or a person that you knew that you said to yourself, I want to be like them?
So we were blessed actually. In Rover BMW, they gave us a mentor, and I had somebody called Alan Naylor, who was absolutely fantastic. He was a director of the business for operations of all things, responsible for just-in-time distribution efficiency, JITD as we affectionately nicknamed it. But in Rover, they gave you all these grey overalls. So you all had your name on them, and you all had these sacks that sort of was to be a uniform that made you all look equal, etc. So I had no idea he was a director. And when they made us join, they make you do 3 months of building cars on the track. And I remember going in at 6 a.m, having done a night shift. And I was just furious because I was tired and I was fed up and I was, if this is character building, I left home at 17, etc. And I really laid into him. And I remember him sort of chuckling because he was a very mature, established director. And he just said, "I'm so glad you're not intimidated by my position." At which point I kind of thought, oh, because I hadn't, at that time, you don't think about who they are and what they might be doing for your career. I just thought he was there, as I've been told I had this mentor to help me. And he was brilliant. He introduced me to things like Stephen Covey and some ways about thinking things. He was very methodological in his approach for, issues and problems and where you might want to go. And he was also instrumental because I made a manager within 12 months and the average time was about 2 to 3 years, with 3 being sort of the average norm. And I was adamant that was too long. I mean, when you're only 21.
You've not got time for 3 years.
Oh my gosh, 3 years, at 18. What did I know at 18? By 21, I was ready to take on everything. So you got placements. You were very lucky to move around. So he would help advise me on which placement to go for next and why and what I was trying to get.
Oh, wow,
he was fantastic. Yeah.
And explain who Stephen Covey is, because not everyone might have heard of that author.
So Stephen Covey is a well-known writer to people who are in the corporate world mostly, I would say. But he wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So he's a business writer, and those 7 habits, which I think there's now an 8, there might even be a 9, I don't know.
7 volumes now.
700 of them now, with but the principles of what he talks about I still use today, and I think it was very relatable, and I recommend the book to everybody. I really do.
So your mentor helped you move forward.
Definitely.
And not everybody has that, so you must have been teachable.
I guess I'd like to think I've had an open mindset. I think when you look back over your career, you realise the times when you haven't, or you thought you had, but you really haven't, because, conscious, unconscious bias, those sorts of things coming into play. But I knew I've always wanted to be better. I've always known that whatever I'm doing, there's a little bit more that can be found, or, co-creation I'm a big fan of now. Putting 2 people together and coming up with something is always going to make more than one, is what I say. It might not make 2, but it's definitely going to make more than one. So why wouldn't you share an idea and see if it can become something more exciting or bigger together?
When you're mentoring people now, in the position that you are as Managing Director of Galt, do you sometimes think of the mentorship you had, and how do you see those type of relationships now from the lofty position that you know how?
I don't see it as lofty, but I really want to help other people and love it when I see them thrive and go on and get a promotion. I hate it when they leave to go somewhere better, but there's a sort of double-edged sort of bittersweet moment where you think, actually, now's your time to go shine. I think what I've learned now is that, if you can build trust with people and they realise the intent of where you're coming from is always going to be good, you can definitely give more direct feedback, and people will take it in the vein that it's intended, as long as they feel safe. So that trust bit is really critical, and I think that's what I developed with Alan very early on, was that ability to just be my authentic self, because I didn't know any better at that age. He gave me a safe place, and one of the first things he said to me is, you will always be safe in here. You can always say it as it is, which I obviously already had, so I was quite grateful.
You didn't need permission for that, really.
He didn't say, take her off my books, I can't deal with this one. He stuck with me, and and at that time I was quite emotional. I'd come from a fairly mixed background where I hadn't learnt the techniques that maybe I've learnt as I've got older. And even now, you can still occasionally, do something where you think, okay, I just maybe should pause and think before I jump right in there. So, yeah, it's a delight to see other people. And I really try and put myself in their shoes and think back to what I would have maybe been thinking or going through that might be affecting behaviours. And Stephen Covey, seek first to understand. I stand by. If you can understand, you'll never walk in someone else's shoes. So you do your best not to judge them. We all make judgments. We have to survive. But it's knowing when you're doing something out of your own self-preservation, which again often comes from your childhood, or recent experiences in some cases, or you're doing it, truly altruistically. And for me, it's all about having shared goals with people. What is it they want, first of all? What is it that you want? If it's a business goal or a personal goal, you need to be sure that you understand where somebody's trying to get to and whether they want to be helped. And if they do.
Do you think everybody's coachable?
I think nearly everybody is coachable. You sometimes just have to unlock the things that are locking the door to them wanting to be. And I think you also have to trust whether somebody wants to be open with you enough to go on that journey. If you or respect maybe is a better word than trust. If they don't want to do it and they're adamant and vocal about that, then maybe that's okay. But I think most people, if you build that a good communication circle with them, would want to do things or could see that there are opportunities if they could grow and develop in a better way.
You've got to help sometimes people see the opportunities that could open up for them.
Yeah, and I think it's remembering that people think differently. We've all had different experiences and that's what sort of shapes and makes us who we are. And that uniqueness of culture and creed and background and knowledge, try and pull out, well, what's the thing that could bring to the party? And that everybody's got a value. And the quiet ones often have got something to say, just needs sometimes pulling out. And it's difficult because people like me who often aren't afraid, or it burns a hole, I have to speak, I have to tell you, because it's not because I think it's the most interesting thing, it's just that it's overflowing, because that's in my DNA. It's working out when it's not in someone's DNA, how you can encourage that. And again, it's about safety. You see it when you're building teams. At Rover BMW, we did 130 graduates went down to Bude for a management training course, and they put us into teams on day 2 or something. And we got this team, and it was clear that, out of say 7 people, 2 of you, 3 of you click immediately, and then there's the 4 slightly ones that you think, okay, and after another couple of days, they were our team. They then said to us, you've got to move teams. Well, we didn't want to go anywhere. This was our team. So you'd gone already in 3 days from thinking, we're obviously the same, so we'll get on, but we're not sure about these two, to suddenly we'd become this family. But then when we moved teams, we ended up 2 or 3 of us sticking together and then having another 4 new and making an even better team. So
that's a good experience to go through.
Really interesting at a young age, isn't it?
Of these structured careers that will give you those opportunities very early on. You don't have to invent it yourself. Someone's going to provide that training if you go into the right company. Yeah,
the corporate training has been absolutely invaluable, especially when you move into cottage type industries, which often are much more entrepreneurial but lack a lot of process.
What took you from L'Oreal to toys?
One of my best friends from university had been travelling the world and had come back from South Africa, I think it was, having learned to sail and doing all these amazing things. I'd been at L'Oreal for a couple of years and very, very organised business, but we'd just hit December, January, we were starting again. So I'd kind of had that treadmill feeling of, well, where am I going next? And they wanted me to move to London, which I couldn't do because I was with someone who didn't want to move to London. So I was sort of starting to feel a little bit trapped at the same time. She came back for a holiday and we were chatting, and then there was an advert in the Sunday Times when people used to advertise in papers,
Oh, wow.
and for this job that said serious but fun. And it had taken me 6 months to get into L'Oreal through various assessment centres, interviews, etc. So I thought, well, it'll take ages anyway. So I popped the CV in the post that weekend, being impulsive, and 2 weeks later they'd offered me a job. So, and I said no, thank you. It felt a bit too serious to me. They were like, it's 7 till 7 and we don't take any prisoners here, and their HR was very strict. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound like a lot of serious.
Where was the fun
Sounds
in
like
that?
Exactly, serious, but where's the fun? And then Dominic Geddes, the sales director at the time, called me back, and him and his second in command in sales walked me through this amazing showroom with Hot Wheels and Barbie, and I'd never seen anything like it, and it was fantastic. And I thought, that's the fun. So I got absolutely sucked into this. Was like, I could do this. This would be fun. And my commonality across the board was I'd often dealt with owner operators. So at Rover BMW, I looked after dealers. When it was Coca Cola, I looked after working men's club and education sites, but often with people who were entrepreneur owner operators. Again, linking back to my past. L'Oreal, it was hairdressing, coiffure. All different businesses, but with the common thing. And I was going to come in to look after the independent trade and the distributors. So people who, it's their money, it's high risk for them, they really care about it. So that was the sort of common thread. And I just thought, this sounds like a lot of fun.
And was it?
It's an amazing industry. Amazing industry.
Well, you're still in the industry, so this was with Mattel.
Yeah, that was with Mattel. And I always say the industry, and it may not be the best description, but it's a bit like that Star Wars, if you know the Jabba the Hutt, where they have that sand pit. As someone said to me once, you won't get your best skills from the toy industry, but you will have the most fun. And I think I have sharpened my skills, maybe not in the same ways I would have done if I'd have stayed in other FMCG or gone into tech sales or that sort of thing. But from a human element, a fun element, a people element, I think we're a really unique and amazing industry full of real characters, a lot of toy boys. There's some toy girls now as well, but...
what does that mean in the toy industry?
Toy boys and toy girls. Well, I think in the olden days, a lot of the toy companies were founder-led. And traditionally, that would have been male. So a lot of and it's really entrepreneurial. So in Coca Cola and L'Oreal, they both had more than 50% market share. When I came into Mattel, without realising, I knew they were number one, but they only had about 12% share. And even Lego now, which is number one, still has, less than 20 or around
of all toys that are being sold in the market.
And because it's sort of partly child-driven, anybody can win. So somebody can invent something or bring something to market, and all of a sudden everybody's into the next yo-yo or the next Hatchimals or Barbie doll or whatever it is. It's so mixed and so unpredictable to a degree. It's fascinating and it's fun and it's contagious.
You're making me want to come on my head. So as a woman moving up the corporate ladder, what do you think's been your superpower to get you to where you are?
Oh, I don't know about superpowers. I think resilience and determination is definitely a big part of it. I think genuinely getting on and liking people, wanting the best. I was very, very results driven when I was younger, and I think that certainly helped me when I was younger. But I think as you go into more senior positions, that role shifts. And the ability to empathise with others and bring out the best and build high-performing teams, that's what, it's not your results, it's our results. And I think women are very good at the our bit. We're not so good at saying, I did this and I did that. It's very much a we thing. But we're actually, thankfully, moving into a world that is much more of a we world. And I think, I'm not sure it's so much about what sex you are, but I think the ability to cut through when... things have changed a lot. When I was younger, there was definitely some resistance to, the maybe slightly higher pitched voice in the room.
People didn't want to hear it.
I don't think they necessarily want to hear it as don't hear it. I think it almost in the past would have been tuned out. I also think that often, not always, and a woman's brain will go in 6 different ways, whereas men will be more one thing at a time. And I think learning how to communicate your point across in an effective way to all sides of the audience is something that I think as a female you have to practice and learn. because otherwise you'll leave people behind, not because you're faster or better thinking than they are, but because your brain is wired maybe slightly differently. And thankfully, 2025, we're accepting that the world of the way brains are wired is very diverse. So, there's no such thing as a normal way of thinking or being now. So I think it's sort of opened up a lot more opportunities for everybody.
Which can only be a good thing.
Which can only be a good thing.
So there's a saying that people's weaknesses are their strengths on steroids. What's the superpower that you'd like for yourself that you don't have in enough quantities?
Talk less. In its simplest. I think just constantly reminding myself to pull out the person who's not speaking, and have the patience to hear what everybody's got to say, because if you've found an answer that you think's the right answer, which often we do, and sometimes you can be the most senior person in the room, you need to remember that sometimes people hear what you're saying as an instruction as opposed to a conversation. And I think that's that superpower of really making sure everybody's heard and that you're listening, properly listening, and not being afraid that your answer isn't the best answer. I think, really working on that set of skills.
What does family mean to you as somebody who's had a career that's taken you to the top of companies, while still bringing up your own children?
Yeah.
What does that mean to you and its relationship with your working life?
I think thus far, pretty much everything I do is for my two boys. And, they have done well out of it. We have a nice life together. There's lots of mistakes I make with them all the time, as I'm sure they will remind me and charge me for the therapy when they need it. As I keep joking with them, you better start saving now, love, because I'm sure I've done things wrong and continue to do things wrong. But almost everything I do is for them, and it's been lovely. My eldest comes with me to an annual ball now and has come as my +1 for the last couple of years, which has been fantastic. And last year he said to me, right, Mum, is it time we walk the room so we can go around and meet everybody again? Because year 1 he did that and he loved it. That is just gives you such a sense of pride to do it for them and have them and give them, education for me has been a really important gift that I think they've both done exceptionally well and continue to do well. One's still very young. And I reflect that. I mean, the Manchester team now that I work with, they are like a family. And I think in business more and more, I'm blessed to work for a company that really values family as well. So it allows you to balance both. And this new hybrid working world allows you to balance both. So, yeah, family is really important. Really, really important.
Is it balance or is it a tug of war? One falls down and one stays up.
Yeah, I think there are moments when you feel like if you spin any more plates, you need to take up a career in the circus. I really do. But I think everybody feels like that. And I think, I've been blessed that because I've worked hard, I've got into a position where I am allowed to make a lot of those decisions myself. It doesn't matter who you are, you often have, whether it's the bank or somebody, you have to report to somebody, wife, husband, etc. Everybody. But I've been lucky to be able to create a good balance most of the time. There have been times when, I missed my son's birthday when he was younger because we had to be in a certain country at that time. You miss things. But I think then it's about teaching you and the family that actually it's like Christmas Day doesn't have to be on December the 25th if that's what you choose to celebrate. You can see family at a different time and it still is Christmas. It's about how we approach things. And mine have been very understanding, and I have a good balance with my ex that they have the kids when I'm not there, and then I have them for quality time when we're together. So it's yeah.
Is there a decision you've had to make in your career which made you think that's what leadership means?
I'm not sure. Let me think. I think, I don't know about that's what leadership means, but I think understanding that people are watching you when you're in a leadership role, and that comes with a responsibility.
Tell me about it.
I just think, in whatever you're doing, I was very ill between child 1 and child 2, and I kept it all a secret because as a woman in industry, I thought it would be held against me. And that's a personal choice. It wasn't because of anything anybody else did. That was a personal choice. And I went through not just one thing, but a number of years where I hid very well, as I think a lot of people do. I think we all wear a mask. Mm-hmm. And I realised looking back that actually when one of my team became ill, I was the first to step in very quickly, reassure them that we would look after them, make sure they understood that they didn't have to come to work, and that we would still back them as best we could. And I wanted other people who've had other more not as serious things, same sort of thing, don't necessarily do as I do. I've done that for my reasons, and that doesn't make it right. And I think, leading by example is so important when you take on a position, because people are looking to you for those right behaviours.
Do you think, without going into too much detail, had you had your time again with what you had gone through, you might have done it in a different way had you been encouraged to do it in a different way?
I definitely would have done it in a different way, yes. And I don't know as what I did particularly hindered me, but I think it hurt me inside because I felt like I'd managed it all by myself. And I don't think the net result would have necessarily been any different had I have done it differently, but I know I would have felt very differently about it.
You might have felt more supported or okay to feel vulnerable in front of people.
Yes, I think so. And I think it comes back to you go back to those childhood things about wanting everything lined up in a certain way and not wanting to be judged or thought of as failing. I think that's been a big lesson.
Thank you for sharing. So, is there a saying or a proverb that you've taken with you through all of your different career changes and moves, like the gramophone?
I used to have a very little Mr. Happy that said on it, "Don't worry, be happy." And my best friend that was the catalyst for me joining the toy industry, we used to swap it when we were both young and single. So depending on who was going through what at whatever time, that used to be like our little conch that would say, right, I think you need it more than me at the moment, you have it. So don't worry, be happy, I think, is and I love the Three Birds by Bob Marley as well. So
keep it upbeat.
Yeah, keep it upbeat.
Jacqueline, you're a successful person in their career. You're managing director of Galt Toys and vice chair of the British Toy and Hobby Association. Lots of younger people starting out in their careers would love to get into the toy industry because it seems so exciting. What advice would you give them?
Oh, I think there are lots of ways you can get into the industry. I think anything that you want to do, don't let anybody ever tell you you can't do it, or at least try. That's the first advice. And I think for the toy industry, there's so many different jobs you can get involved in, whatever it is your thing, whether it's product development, operations. Business is business. So in a lot of cases, we talk ourselves and we check out, especially as women, we check out of roles before we should. Don't check out before you've checked in. Put yourself forward. There's always a learning, even if it's a no. So just, gather up your CV, network, LinkedIn, make those contacts, reach out to anybody that you want to try and get through, and somebody will respond. And then, if you can get your foot on the ladder, or you follow a vocational career and want to then switch, there's so many ways. And because we're entrepreneurial, people are less worried about qualifications. It's often about attitude and desire and passion and motivation.
That sounds wonderful. Who doesn't want that? Jacqueline, what does the future hold for you?
Well, that's a great question. Who knows? I've done my best, because I told you I always used to look so far forward all the time. I'm doing my best at the moment to try and stay in the now. I really enjoy the team I'm working with. The journey, actually, I live in the south, I work in the north. It doesn't bother me, because actually when I walk through the door up there's such a lovely welcome. We're doing good things. The team I work with broader, we don't have a head office just in the north. We cover European countries and now international. So, I don't know what tomorrow holds. I just care that what we're doing, I do my best with, that my boys get the best start in life. One's about to have one more year before possibly university. The other's just started what we call big school. And, I think, sort my personal life into a good place and enjoy what I've worked hard for.
That's lovely. Jacqueline Taylor-Foo, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.